Your note, always a must-read every morning. And for me, the takeaway was clear. Who are the winners, but also who are the losers? And I'll go to the losers now, because you say this is bad for AMD, this is putting pressure on ARM. How so?
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, immediately it's going to add competitive pressure, I guess, with AMD facing Intel now with Nvidia and the technology they bring for the PC desktop market. So that's one area, but basically a lot of investors don't care so much about what happens in the PC market. They care much more in the data center. And that's where AMD has been gaining a lot of market share and server processors from Intel as they've been lagging on the technology side. So I think this makes them, Intel a more credible player. It's going to be a guess as to when these products may come out. And then for ARM, ARM is the biggest licensing company for a lot of these non-x86 server processors and chips. And so they have a very good relationship with Nvidia as well as others. And I think it just adds a little bit of uncertainty as to, market share in the data center market, now that Intel and is going to have x86 working with Nvidia.
We're looking at the share price reactions. In fact, ARM and AMD are basically the only chip stocks in the red today. The rest of the stocks, the semiconductor index, is well into the green, up more than 3.5%, Jordan. But as you say, Nvidia and ARM have a very close relationship. And I think if you go and ask ARM, they'd say, we know Nvidia is very committed to us. And also, Masayoshi Son invested in Intel some $2 billion. He must think that all boats can rise here, because he, of course, has a key stake in ARM.
Yeah, I think it was mentioned earlier that this is providing valuable diversification across the industry. And I think that's the way SoftBank would probably look at it, is they're spreading bets across a lot of these different companies, not necessarily betting on one horse to win the race. Now, they do own like over 80% of ARM, so clearly that's their key horse in this race. But yes, they invested in Intel, probably more for manufacturing capabilities down the road. But I think overall, this is just kind of a positive shot in the arm for the broader semiconductor sector. I mean, it definitely strengthens the domestic leading logic supplier, which is Intel, makes them a bit stronger. And I think it, over time helps Nvidia broaden their bets as well within the data center.
Yeah, talk to us about how the underlying architectures are currently competing or indeed winning out? Because I think for many, they're trying to understand how Nvidia at the moment just seems to dominate, because they not only own the hardware stack, but their software is so important as well. When you add Intel into that situation, what does x86 really mean for Nvidia's long-term domination?
Well, I think, obviously before the deal, Nvidia was happy to just offer their Grace CPU, which is ARM-based, and so they would offer that in conjunction with the high processing speed GPUs, so it was Grace Blackwell as a solution. I think now they're going to be able to offer a x86-based server processor, which is what Intel does and what AMD does. So it enables customers, as Ian was saying before me, to run these workloads in any sort of environment. They don't have to just go with Nvidia. They have flexibility. And let's be honest, as much as Intel has struggled, they still have the largest market share of server chips in the data center. It's just they're losing a lot of that. I think the challenge here is that it's going to put more pressure on an AMD, because AMD is not only facing pressure from Nvidia on the GPU side, but they're facing a lot of pressure in these custom ASIC chips, like from Broadcom, right, and Marvell and others, and they don't do a custom ASIC. So again, that's something ARM says they want to do. They want to provide technology to do their own custom chip. We'll see what happens there. But again, the space is constantly evolving and moving, and that's what keeps all of us on our toes, namely investors.
I mean, certainly it's a game of frenemies. And Jordan, that's why your note's so integral, is you sort of sentiment check what long-only investment sentiment is like and where people are over-allocated, under-allocated. Should people be buying into Intel as it rips this high?
Well, that I think is the key question is like, will this pop in the stock on excitement about this investment sustain and pull in real mutual fund buyers? I think momentum and quantitative strategies probably chase the stock. I want to see if real mutual funds come in, kind of like they did with Oracle a week ago when it rallied. A lot of people were not overweight Oracle and they had to chase it. Intel is in these benchmarks that a lot of these relative managers or mutual funds try to keep up with. And this is a big move, and no one really owns it that I speak to. So that's going to be the question. If you don't own it and it's up 30%, how long do you want to wait? If it doesn't come back, you may have to just start buying it.
And what about elsewhere? What's been so interesting is the whole semiconductor index, bar AMD and ARM, ripped higher. And even the chip equipment makers, ASML over in Europe, for example. How much broader can this winning streak get?
That's the question I keep asking myself, is this has been an epic run for the semiconductors, not just this whole year, but as of late. I think a lot of people were expecting this group to pause and money to broaden out into other areas of both tech and equities. And it really hasn't. So that's forced people to try to keep up. The memory stocks like Micron, SanDisk, and the disk drives, Western Digital and Seagate, have recently just taken charge. And this is because if inferencing demand, like at OpenAI and Anthropic and these AI models, is increasing, that's putting added pressure on capacity. And these companies need more memory, they need more compute. And ultimately, they'll need the tools and equipment to manufacture more of these chips. So I think for now, it all looks great. The question is going to be when the companies report in October, largely, will the results and the guidance be enough to keep this rally going? And we'll find out.